And welcome back to Lighten Up. I'm sitting here with Dr. Grace Virtue. She actually wrote this book, A Mother's Tales of Hope. How will I know my children when I get to heaven? And I just wanted to catch up with her because, on the Lighten Up show, what we do is we bring people on who actually have great stories and who's living the life, just living the good life and taking care of themselves. So I wanted to catch up with Dr. Grace Virtue because she has such a great story. And you want to definitely pick up this book when you get a chance. But give a nice Lighten Up welcome to Dr. Grace Virtue. Hi, Grace.
Hi, Catherine.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank
Good.
you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Obviously, this book that you've written, you and I had so much in common.
Right.
Because we are mothers,
Right.
single mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about, what you're talking about in the book. Now, you have a little poem that's starting here.
Yes.
It's so poignant. Can I read that?
Sure, absolutely.
Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. And that's from Khalil
Gibran.
Gibran.
Yeah, Lebanese poet. And it's really very expressive of what we experience as mothers, raising our children into what we want them to be, but at the same time having the wisdom to let them go and to be their own persons.
Absolutely. I mean, just as a mother, that meant so much to me, and that's why I wanted to share it with my audience, because I think it's almost like the contradiction of sorts in a
Absolutely.
little, you want to keep them with you, but you can't because you're
exactly what it
raising
is.
them to be independent. I think because we're both mothers, we can't understand that. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that our children are not babies anymore.
Absolutely.
And this book is talking about some questions that your children have asked you. Can we talk about what you have in this book? What compelled you to write this book?
There are so many things, so many reasons why I had to write this book. One of them is just what I call regaining my voice. I was a journalist in Jamaica, and then I left to work in the United States. And the voice that I had as a journalist, writing in the newspaper and that kind of thing, I lost that when I went there. So it was a way of reclaiming my voice.
Okay.
It was also a way of processing my experiences. There are some, very interesting or challenging experiences there. And I felt that writing them helps me to process and understand them better.
Right.
And most importantly, as a single mom, you might have had some of these anxieties where you wonder, what if something should happen to me?
Right.
What would happen to my children? What are those life lessons that I'd want them to learn? And at the end of the day, that's probably the most important reason, that God forbid something would have happened when my children were young. I would have wanted them to know these lessons, and so I put them down on paper. And so one of the questions, for example, is should gay people burn in hell?
Right.
Very interesting question. This was around 2004, leading up to the presidential election in the United States, when the whole issue of homosexuality and all these kind of cultural warfare became very prominent. So the kids were tuned in, and that's one of the questions that I had to answer. And bear in mind that I'm a Jamaican, rural Jamaican immigrant. Grew up in a somewhat fundamental Christian home,
Right.
and I had to address that in a way that made sense for the 21st century.
Right.
Another questions about abortion. Abortions are wrong, mommy, right?
Right.
So the way she framed that question is itself a contradiction.
Absolutely.
And it's all these great moral issues that we're struggling with. And I also had to respond to give her an answer that made sense. And that answer is, as a woman, you are in control of your own body.
Right.
We're not advocating abortions by any means.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you found yourself in a situation where that's the best option, then you should have a right to make that decision.
So you're advocating choice.
You're
advocating
independence. Independence,
Right.
empowerment as a woman.
Right.
And for us to get away from this notion that some of these things can be legislated or that it's anybody's prerogative to tell you what to do
Right.
with your body.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it sounds as if what you're talking about is teaching your children to be strong, to be independent, to be their
Absolutely.
own person.
Absolutely.
And I think that that is the gift that we should give as parents. I feel
Right.
very strongly about that. You touched on a couple of things. One was, you know, I don't know if anybody can appreciate, other than a parent,
Yeah.
how that feels to think that you may not be here one day to take care of your
Absolutely.
children.
Absolutely.
And that is a lot of stress. But at the end of the day, in the lighten up vein, you can't control it.
You can't control it.
So what do? You put things in place
Exactly.
to ensure that they'll be okay,
Exactly.
and you trust
Exactly.
that they'll be okay in the event
Absolutely.
that something happens.
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that completely.
Right.
I really, really do.
We have to do some amount of preparation all the time.
Right.
It's, you know, it's a responsibility to ourselves and to our children to ensure that if things had gone wrong, that our children would have been looked after
Right.
in some way. They would have had that moral compass
Right.
to guide them along the way.